Hey everybody, we're really excited that you're here with us today on Tightline Fishing TV. We're going to be doing something that I love to do and probably most of you do, and that's bank fishing. We're going to give you some techniques about how to fish, where to fish. You know, most of the time when you walk up to a small body of water like a pond, you make a cast or two and then you move on, or you stay in one spot for way too long. And so we're going to show you some things that are going to help you out today. Hopefully we're going to catch some fish. And hopefully you guys are going to learn something today that's going to help you out a lot in God's great outdoors as you fish. When you're setting up to go small lake fishing or pond fishing, whatever you call it, this pond we're at today is probably about 2 acres and we can walk around just about the whole thing. You need to downsize your tackle, and when I say downsize, you know, when I'm fishing a big lake or a reservoir on my boat's like a floating tackle box. So I've got all these boxes with different baits in it. Well, I can't bring all that stuff with me. So I have to think about, okay, what do I want to bring, what's necessary and what's not necessary. So what I do typically is I'll take like a small backpack and I'll just pull out a few things and make what I actually call a pond box. It's just a little small tackle box where I put hard baits. And I've got things like rattle baits and crank baits and spinner baits in here, and I've just got a small assortment of each of those things. And you can see that that fits right here in this small box. And I can put it down in this backpack. And then what I'll do in another pouch is I'll just put 6 or 8 bags of soft plastics that are some of my favorites. I know I've not fished here but just a few times, but I know that the gentleman that owns the place told me there's crawfish and brim and shad in this lake. So I've packed appropriately. I've got some crawfish imitations, I've got some shad imitations, worm imitations, and then the hard baits. And then on the front, what I'll do is put my terminal tackle, hooks and weights and things like that, so they're easily accessible. And then I can throw this thing on my back. Normally, if I'm at my pond, I live on a small pond too, I know that I'm going to carry a couple of rods because I pretty much know what I'm going to do. Here, I don't know the lake as well, so I'm going to carry a couple more rods. I'm actually going to carry 2 spinning rods today and 2 casting rods. And then since we came in a vehicle and we can drive close, I actually brought a couple of backup rods in case one broke or I break a line or I get a bird's nest or something. And so that's what you want. You want a light setup, something you can throw on your back and carry, 3 or 4 rods that you can put in your hand and go. So we're going to go try it and see if we can catch some today. There's a fish. Oh, you missed it. Oh, that may have been a brim. If you get a bite on a soft plastic and you miss him, always check your bait. This time of the year, I know there are probably no fish spawning, but the water temp's probably still only in the mid-70s. And so when you come to a strange place, my assumption is when it's spring and the water's still pretty cool, I'm going to start on the shallow end of the lake, work my way to the deeper part. And you can usually tell that because there will be an earthen embankment or a dam, and that's going to be the deepest part of the lake. And so what I do, I just completely start on the opposite side and work my way toward that. And I've gotten a couple bites on the back end of here. We're just going to have to keep working until we figure out where the fish are and what they want. And it may just be a matter of timing today, that as the water warms up, they may bite a little bit better. Most times a pond is not very deep, 2 to 6 feet. But when you're throwing a bait like this, a bottom bumping bait in deeper water, I may be throwing out an 8, 9, 10 foot. I'm going to throw out there. If I'm using a spinning reel, I'm going to leave my reel disengaged and let it free fall. Because if I click the bail closed and I tight line it, that bait's going to drift back toward me and I'm going to miss 8 or 10 or 12 feet of where I'm casting to. You want it to drop straight down, so you leave that bail open. This little weather may have really thrown these fish for a loop. There's a fish. I got it. Oh, it's a good one too. Oh, he's going to a tree. It's not a bad one, but it's not a giant. It's pretty good. And all these fish here, we haven't caught big giant ones yet, but they sure are healthy fish. And they sure do pull good. Come here, buddy. You always know fish are healthy when they look like this. They're wide through here and thick across the back. And that fish was right in the corner where I was talking about it. Got a little red spot on the fin there, probably healing up from spawning and trying to eat, so we're gonna let him go do that and see if we can catch another one. Almost every pond you'll fish too will have some kind of a drain. Usually it's a little later in the year they gather up around it, but I will fish to it no matter what time of year it is, because it's typically a place that's real different than anything else on the lake, and it'll draw fish. Fish will hang out in the shade of it or hang out to get in that little bit of current that's around it. You may not get bit around it, but if you're next to it, you always need to make 2 or 3 casts to it. Turns out it was really tough at this first pond where we fished. We found out a little bit later they had just fertilized this pond. So we tried to go to the second pond on the property, and we decided to try a finesse approach with a Senko. So we have fished and we have fished hard and we are not doing well. So I'm going to go to a bait that's a little more subtle presentation. It's basically a soft plastic stick bait. The original one was called a Senko. A guy named Gary Yamamoto invented it, but everybody makes them now. This is a Bass Pro version. And I'm throwing green pumpkin, and I dyed the tail just a little bit, chartreuse, just a tad. So I'll take this fluke off. It may be a little too big of a hook, but I've got a 4/0 hook. Probably a 3/0 would be what I'd throw normally. Since I've already got it tied on, basically I'm going to come in to where the hook bends. I'm going to come out about 1/4 of an inch. Let it fall down underneath. It's just like I rig everything else. And then I want that hook to lay flat, so I'm going to bend it up and push it through where it comes through. And now it's laying flat on the back, but I don't want it to get hung in all this wood, so I'm going to back that hook up just a touch and skin hook it, and you can still see that hook. But when that fish pulls down right there, it'll pop out and I can hook them. Doesn't have to come through all that plastic. You want them straight. And the beauty of this bait, the reason it's called a Senko, is because the action is in the sinking. When it sinks, it just does this. And on a day when the bite's tough, sometimes that little subtle no weight can work when nothing else does. This bait's real subtle, and it's a little difficult to fish because like I said, the action's in the falling. So really all you want to do is jerk it a couple times and then you let it slack line. And really when you're going to feel the bite is when you pull back up to move it again, and if there's weight, set the hook. Little bitty baby. We have fished hard and fished hard, and I made a little color change here, and I've gotten 2 bites in the last 6 or 8 casts. This isn't a very big one, but I at least know that he's eating the right thing. And sometimes that little subtle difference can make all the difference. And what we did too, we came up and concentrated on the back corner of this pond, and that may be where they are. He's not real big, but he'll grow up and be big one day. Things are looking up a little bit. We're not getting giants, but we're getting a few more bites. And the subtle difference is just a color change. Come in here, fella. Now that is a prime example of a post-spawn fish. They've been on the bed and they're real skinny and they're trying to eat to get back into shape. That's what he was trying to do, but I messed him up. We're gonna let him go do that. On days like today, you just kind of have to stay at it. If you have a high pressure day after a kind of a cool snap, particularly in the springtime, it can be tough first thing, and you just fish until you figure them out, basically. That's a little better one. Alex and I were talking, I was just kind of fishing some open water and I started swimming that thing and that fish hit it. And I talked a lot earlier about on a high pressure day like this, how sometimes fish will suspend. Sometimes that's what you have to do to catch them. You have to think like they think. They're all post-spawn, they're all kind of skinny, trying to eat. That's what we're gonna let this one do. We caught a few fish on the Cinco in the second pond, but it got kind of tough there also. So we decided to try the third pond on this same property and see how we could do. Where you at, fishies? There's one. I had just had to call him. That's all I had to do. Oh, he got me on something. No, he didn't. He got me on his face. That's actually a little better one, but he's not a giant. Wait a minute. That 3-pounder jumped off and this one got on there. Tell you what though, on a day when it's been as tough as it has today, you thank the Lord for every single one of them and that you're not at the office answering the phone. And he ate it. What we're doing is just trying to figure out any way to trigger a strike today, and typically on a cold front, post-frontal day, something really subtle like what we've been throwing can be good, but also something to make them react. And this is this rattle trap type bait. It's a red-eye shad, chrome blueback, something that's just obnoxiously loud coming by them. They really hit it more out of instinct than hunger. Finally got one on this rattling bait. We talked them into it. And this fish hit like a ton of bricks. It feels like a good one, but I may have him foul hooked. Boy, if I hadn't seen him, I would have thought he was 6 or 7 pounds, but he's probably 1.5 pounds. But he kind of proved my point that you can catch him on a day like today, but it's typically one of two ways. It's either real subtle or a reaction bait, like this rattle trap. And you can see why that fish pulled so hard. Oh, he finally decided to jump because he was hooked kind of under the chin. And but that's one of the nicer ones we've caught today, which is a little sad. That a 2-pounder is one of the big ones, but it was cool because, I mean, he just slammed it. He didn't play around with it. And that just shows you that what we had talked about happening is happening. They're not really wanting to eat, but when I brought it by him, he just really got it good. I really love all kinds of fishing. I love catching different species. I love fishing out of a boat, fishing saltwater, freshwater. But one of my favorite things is fishing from the bank. I grew up fishing that way. And I think the reason I like it is because it's so simple, it's so straightforward. When we get out on a bass boat, sometimes on a big lake, we tend to have all of our tackle there and all of our electronics, and we kind of tend to overcomplicate things. We think it through too much. And on a small lake like this, you can keep it simple and you can use small baits. You can carry just a handful of things with you, and it's a great way to catch them. In fact, a lot of the techniques I use on bigger lakes, I learned fishing on a small pond because I take one bait with me and fish with it the whole time. And so many times in our fishing, we tend to do that. We tend to overcomplicate it when it really is as simple as using 1 or 2 baits and 1 or 2 colors. You know, a lot of times we do that in our Christian life also. We tend to overcomplicate things. I should be doing this, or I should be doing that, or I should be reading this, or I should be doing this act of service there. And really none of those things are bad. But when it comes down to it, the Bible spells out our relationship with Christ as something really simple, and spells it out in the Old and New Testaments. In Micah chapter 6, verse 8 says this, "He has shown you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you? To act justly and love mercy and walk humbly with God." So what God wants from me most is really to live like I'm supposed to love others like He loves, and then most importantly, to walk humbly with Him, to have a close daily walk with Him. And then Jesus spells it out in the New Testament this way. He's talking with some of the teachers back then, and it says this in Mark chapter 12. One of the teachers of the law came and heard him debating. Noticing that Jesus had given a good answer, he asked him, "Of all the commandments, which is the most important?" And Jesus says this, "The most important one," answered Jesus, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. The second is this, love your neighbor as yourself. There's no commandment greater than these." You know, in fishing, a lot of times we overcomplicate things. We need to keep it simple. And we need to do the same thing in our walk with Jesus Christ. What He wants mostly from us is a close, personal walk with us, for us to walk humbly with Him, to love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love our neighbor as ourselves. And that's what He wants from us. And maybe you say, "Well, I can't really do that, Royce, because I don't really have a relationship with Him." And you know what? That's a really simple thing also. It's just as simple as admitting that you're a sinner, turning from those sins and asking Jesus to come and live in your heart and be Lord of your life. Hey, thanks so much for joining us today. Hey guys, what we do at Go Fish Ministries is share the gospel and encourage believers in their walk with Christ. We do this through a variety of events such as wild game dinners, kids camps, men's events, music events, or even if you or someone you know just needs a day on the water. Go Fish Ministries wants to point you toward Jesus and help you know Him better. Contact us through our website. We'd love to serve you any way we can. God bless you and go fish. So we fished the third pond on this property. It was really tough there also. We caught a couple of fish, but we think it was a couple of things. There was a weather change, made it really tough. Also, they just fertilized these ponds, which can make it tough also. So we decided to call it a morning, and then we fished a little bit later that evening in a pond that I'm really familiar with. There's a little one. Oh, run. He may not be as little as I thought he was. He is little. He's running straight at me though. Come here, dude. Well, that's number one. He's the brand we're looking for, just not the size. Wow, check that one out. If you saw how we recorded the last couple of weeks, you would think I was the master of the 8-incher. This water's warmed up in the last 45 minutes or hour before dark. We can get some fish that have gotten a little bit more active. So I'm throwing this little speed crawl, trying to make it imitate a bait fish kind of on the top. They like that. There he is. That's a good one too. Boy, I threw there 3 times before that fish ever came up and got it. That's a pretty good fish right here. Get in here in the mud and get him. He's not the biggest one I've ever caught, but I'm awful proud of him today. About a 2.5 pounder. And we had seen these fish chasing up here and just all kind of bait. And I crossed this little grass patch. There's about 5 strands of grass, and the third time he came out of the even shallower grass and ate it. But man, that's a beautiful fish. Hadn't been off the bed long. The tail is still kind of torn up. let him go heal up. They're just in there feeding, following bait up here before dark. I just need to find their moms and dads. Yes, sir. He's just out there roaming, eating bait. And boy, we have worked all day for this fish right here. I'm gonna try my best to keep him on. And he's gonna try his best to get off. Just out there on a flat. And the important thing about this place, and you can see this in ponds you fish, was we started seeing bait. And when you start seeing bait, you can be sure the bass are not far behind. Here he comes. Let's see you, buddy. Get out that stuff. Yes, sir. Here, big boy. Oh, that was gushy. Oh, look at that. Whoo. Boy, that's a 5 or 6 pounder. And we just hadn't given up on them. And that same little tiny bait that I caught that one on, caught all those little bitty ones on, caught this exact fish. And I really think this fish has spawned out, so you see what they're doing. They're in here eating this bait, and she's just a big girl. So we're gonna let her get even bigger. Let you get bigger. It'll be easy with these bigger ones too. I don't know if you guys notice, Thank you, Dora. Woo. Saw a fish roll up over here, and I pitched in there and caught this one, but we both think that's a different fish. We're gonna say that anyway. Sometimes when you're fishing ponds, and this one, you can look at the bank and tell it's probably got a pretty soft bottom. If you're within a cast of a big stream of bubbles coming up, that was a fish, he let go of it. Something's making those bubbles. It's not happening by accident. And most times, if it's a good many of them, that means there's something down on that bottom eating. So if you can throw in there right on where they are, a lot of times you'll get bit right in that spot. I got bit just then doing that, but I think it was a brim. That's the only thing you can't tell. You can't tell what the fish is usually. Look at that. Yeah. That was just a big roe. I got to throw it. And clearly, so that was just like, it was like watching something on, oop, there he is. Bubble pattern. That fish, I was telling Alex, it looked like you just saw a row of bubbles. So clearly in that 10 inches, 1.5 feet of water, that fish was running bait down there because you could see the line of it. He's just going nutty. Come here, biggin. Nice little keeper. Not a giant, but not a little tiny one either. And they're all eating it really good. They're in here for a reason, and that's to eat before bedtime. And that's just a nice fat keeper. There he is. That one came up and blew up on the, oh, can you get, he's jumping like a tarpon. We started seeing a lot of fish come up, and so I put on a popper, just couldn't hardly stand it. And on the first cast, that fish just creamed it, and he is putting on a show. He does not like that thing in his face. I don't guess I would either. It's a nice fish. I got him down in the mouth. He was not coming off either. That's about a 2 pounder on the popper. Yep. It's amazing to watch, and it's cool when you say something and it works that way, because 9 times out of 10 it doesn't. But I just told Alex, out here 20, 30 minutes before dark, they'll get off that speed crawl. I need to throw something different, but I was gonna have to tie it on because my reel messed up, and I took the 2 minutes to do that. And about the second cast, this one just creamed that poplar. What they think it is an injured bait fish or a frog, but I think it looks more like a bait fish. And man, they just can't stand to see something like that just on top. And it doesn't work always, but it did tonight. It's usually better on low light conditions, early in the morning or late in the evening, and then cloudy days. See if another one will hit it. Come on, fish. One more. There he is. I got. Oh, that's a good one too. Not a giant, but he's a good solid keeper. He came up and ate it too, man. I mean, sucked it under just like they're supposed to on a topwater. Just 10, 15 minutes before dark, these fish are chasing bait up here. Decided to go with the poplar instead of the speed crawl. And it has been a ticket for the last 2 or 3 fish. Even though he's not giant, he's a pretty nice one. Good one to end on. We're about to have to go in and run away from the dark and get some dinner. But hey, we just want to thank you guys for being with us today. Had a tough morning and really a tough afternoon, but we hung with it, and that's what you got to do on days like today, post cold front days. At some point during the day, these fish are gonna bite, and today it just happened to be right before dark, and we caught a few nice ones right at dark. So we're gonna maybe cast 2 or 3 more times and then go to the house and get some dinner. Hey, thanks so much for being with us today. Turned out to be a good day after all. We went fishing a little bit later in the evening and caught a few fish, and that's just what you have to do sometimes when you're fishing, whether it's from the bank or from a boat. You just got to stick with it till you figure out how to catch them. Hey, join us next week.